All right. Welcome, everyone, to this evening's edition of Stories for Healing. As you may know, if you're already been here once before, if not, if you're a first timer, this is a project that was just launched a couple of days ago. Um, these are times in which there's a tremendous amount of division within our communities, within our countries, within the world. And it's a time when we need to find a way to heal those rifts. In my experience, some things clearly don't work, and that's telling other people what's right and what's wrong, and telling people what they should or shouldn't do. That tends to add to the division. What does seem to help is telling stories about healing. And so we've embarked in this project to have two storytelling sessions a day, very brief, 15, 20 minutes, where storytellers from around the world come and tell a story of healing. And maybe we chat for a minute after it, but that's about it. 15, 20 minutes, you're in and you're out. And we have over 30 storytellers already lined up to tell literally from around the world. And tonight we have Selina Eisenberg, who's going to tell us a story. And Selina, why don't you tell us a story?
Thank you. I'd love to. So I'm not going to tell you the title, just because you'll know it by the end of the story. But it is a King Solomon legend. Long, long ago, King Solomon lived, and he was a great king. He was a wise, powerful king, and he could speak the language of every type of man. He could also speak the language of every sort of animal and insect. Now, King Solomon, as powerful as he was, he had a guard, a commander, and this commander's name was Benaiah. And Benaiah was his most trusted servant of all. And he would give Benaiah everything to do, and he never had a complaint at all. But one day, as he was just walking through the palace halls, he overheard Benaiah speaking to some of his soldiers, and they were jovial, they were laughing, and he was boasting. He was boasting about just how great he was and how he could do anything that the king ever asked him to do, and he could do it well. Well, you could imagine King Solomon's surprise. In fact, he was horrified. He had always known Benaiah to be a humble, quiet sort of man, a man he could trust, not someone who was so bold, especially to the younger soldiers. So King Solomon had decided that he needed to do something about this. And he thought long and hard, and then he came upon a task that he knew, well, Benaiah would not be able to complete. So he called Benaiah to his throne room. And when Benaiah came in, he bowed low and he said, "Your Majesty, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to hear what you have for me today." And King Solomon said, "Benaiah, I have been hearing that there exists in the world a ring which is magical, and I wish to be the only one who owns it. So you will have to go and get it for me." And Benaiah bent down low and said, "Oh, Your Majesty, this ring, it sounds amazing. It sounds fantastic, but you will have to tell me more details, and once I know, well, I promise I will dedicate myself to finding it for you, no matter how long it takes." And so the king, with a twinkle in his eye, mischievously said, "Benaiah, the ring that I am searching for, it is so special. It can make a happy man sad, sorrowful, and it can make a sad man jovial, happy again. That is the ring I wish for you to find for me." Benaiah bent down low and said, "Oh, my goodness, that is indeed an incredible wonder, but I shall find it and search for it, and I will bring it back to you, I promise." And then King Solomon said, "You have 6 months to do it within." Benaiah said, "I will search everywhere, and I know I will come up with it." And so as he left the throne room, King Solomon was chuckling to himself, for he knew that this ring just did not exist. Now, the first place that Benaiah went for this quest, he traveled into Jerusalem to meet with the goldsmiths. And there he asked every one of them, "Have you ever heard of a ring that can make a happy man sad or a sad man happy?" Well, those goldsmiths looked and they had no idea. They said, "It sounds fantastic. What a wonder to have. We wish we did. But no, we don't." So he went to the silversmiths, and there were many. And each time he went in, he would ask the same question, but not one of them had any idea of what he was talking about. They simply said, "We're sorry." Well, there were coppersmiths in Jerusalem, so Benaiah went to visit them as well. And every time he walked into a coppersmith's room, he would say, "I am looking for a ring that can make a happy man sad and a sad man happy. Do you have such a wonder?" They too tugged at their beards and scratched their heads, and they did not. Now 2 weeks had passed, but that was okay. That wasn't a long time, and it made Benaiah start to think that he ought to go to where traders were traveling, because this clearly was a ring that came from distant lands. And so he made his way to where the caravan drivers would come with the caravan traders. And when he would meet them, he would ask each one, "Is it possible that in your baskets of trinkets and gems that you have a ring that will make a happy man sad and a sad man happy?" Oh, they looked, they searched. There were rubies and diamonds and sapphires and gold and silver and copper and all kinds of wonderful trinkets and rings, but no, not a one had such a magical, fantastical ring. He went back day after day after day, but not one trader, not one driver had what he was looking for. Again, weeks passed, and it made him realize that he needed to perhaps go down to the ports, meet the sea captains, for surely they came from even further lands. And there he asked those sea captains and seafarers, did they have a ring that would make a happy man sad or a sad man happy? They looked through the cargo. None had heard of such an incredible ring. They all shook their heads and simply said no. But Benaiah went back day after day after day, and he was starting to wonder if this ring even existed. Well, soon a month had rolled into two rolled into 3. Now he was starting to realize that he had to go further forward. And so he took his camel, and sometimes he went by donkey or horse, and he went into lands that were far, far from Jerusalem. And there sometimes he would see people who were impoverished, were hungry, lived in very shanty dwellings. And he would ask everyone he saw, "Have you ever seen a ring that could make a happy man sad or a sad man happy?" But they all shook their heads. They had troubles of their own. They didn't know of such a ring. And then he would go to other places where there were lords and ladies and people with unbelievable wealth. And he would go in and he would speak to all of them and he would say, "Do you know of a ring that can make a happy man sad or a sad man happy?" But with all their wealth and all of their gems, no, that might have been a wonderful trinket to have in their collections, but they did not know. And Benaiah was starting to get quite depressed. When he looked at these sad people and he looked at these very happy people, well, he realized himself that he didn't think that these happy people would ever be sad in their lives, or these sad people, he never saw an ounce of happiness for them. And 3 months rolled into 4 months, and 4 months rolled into 5 months. And Benaiah himself was not sleeping well, he was not eating well, and he had no idea of where to find this ring. And it was for the first time in his life that he actually thought he just might fail. And so, near the end of 5 months, he decided it was time to go back to Jerusalem. And when he did, he thought to himself, I must find this ring. I cannot go to King Solomon without it. So he went back to the jewelers in Jerusalem. But there was nothing. He went desperately into the markets, into the bazaars, and he looked through everything, every small little stall, but nothing. And on the day just before the day before he was to return to King Solomon, he ended up leaving Jerusalem downhearted, despondent, melancholy, for he knew he was failing. He had failed. And as he kicked his feet along the dusty road, he noticed a young boy, and that young boy had a small rug, and on the rug were trinkets. And the boy was calling out, "Make my day. Oh, please make my day, sir." Well, as sad as Benaiah was, he went and he started to rummage very quickly through all of those trinkets. He moved each one from place to place to place, but he started to cry. And the boy saw that he was visibly shaken. He said, "Sir, what is it that you're searching so wildly for?" And Benaiah said, "I have been searching for a long time. I am looking for a ring that can make a happy man sad. And at one point I was happy, but now I am that sad man. And I don't know how to make myself happy again. And I know for sure that I have failed my king." The boy looked and said, "That sounds like a wondrous ring, but I am too young to know of such things. But you've spoken about magic, and my grandfather knows magic." And just then, an old man, of many summers and many winters old, and he came upon Benaiah, and he said, "I hear that you are looking for some type of ring. Tell me about it again." And Benaiah said again, "A ring that can make a happy man sad and a sad man happy. I need this ring. I will fail my quest if I don't have it." And the man put up a leathery old hand that had seen much work, and he said, "Give me a few minutes. Let me see what I might have." And he went into the shadows, into his room where he did his tinkering. And Benaiah and the young boy could hear clanking and clinking and some engraving and banging going on. And a few minutes later, the man emerged with a beautiful, shiny gold ring. It was round. He handed it to Benaiah, and at first Benaiah looked at it and thought, "It's just a ring." But as he gazed and turned it over, well, he saw it was engraved with 3 Hebrew letters. And he knew each of those letters, and he understood what they symbolized for. And suddenly that sadness was elation. He was happy again. He said, yes, this is exactly the ring that I have been searching for." And he put it in his pocket, and he pulled out gold coins, and he handed it to the young boy. And he gave more coins to the old man, and he thanked them profusely. And he went back, a happy man, to the palace. Well, that night he slept like a baby, like he hadn't slept in months. And the next morning, when he awoke, he bathed, he refreshed his clothing, he ate for the first time, and that food tasted good. And then he went to see the king in the throne room. When he arrived, well, there was a huge feast in place, and he had no idea because he had been gone. And when he came in, well, there were musicians, there were minstrels, there was food, there was wine, there was everything you could imagine, and beautiful people dressed in beautiful garb, and lots of laughter and joking. And he saw King Solomon sitting on his throne in the most jovial of moods. Well, when King Solomon noticed Benaiah. He said, "Come, come, Benaiah, come. Oh, it's been a while. I'm wondering if you have that special ring that I had asked you for." And he began laughing to the people that were beside him and joking. And he had a smile from ear to ear. But what he really was thinking, how long should I keep Benaiah in this little game of humiliation? How long shall I test him? Because I know he does not have the ring I'm looking for. But Benaiah bent down low and he said, "Your Majesty, I have the very ring that you've been searching for." Well, King Solomon's eyes were open, but he still had that smile on his face. And Benaiah handed it to the king, and the king took it, and he looked at it. And as he looked, he turned it all around, and he noticed 3 Hebrew letters, a gimel, a zayin, and a yud, standing for the words Gam ze ya'avor. And he was no longer smiling. His face had dropped. And as he stared at this ring, he understood the meaning. And he looked about and he quickly put up his hand and he said, "No more music. Stop bringing in food." And everyone in that room stopped in their tracks, what they were doing, what they were saying. If they were dancing, they stood still. And the king looked at the ring over and over. You see, that Hebrew saying, the 3 words, they stood for a word, 3 words, Gam ze ya'avor, which means this too shall pass. And the king looked all around and he thought, all of this grandeur, everything that's here today will someday be gone. Perhaps people will not remember me through the generations. Perhaps no one will even know that King Solomon ever existed. And he was sad, and he was heartbroken at this thought. But now he understood the power of this magical ring, for it was a ring that could truly make a happy person sad or a sad person happy. And he looked all about. And he said to Benaiah, "Oh, Benaiah, my loyal servant, I am so sorry." And he got down off his throne. And he said to him, "Please, how can you ever forgive me? For I have wronged you. My plan was to humiliate you. I did not think such a ring ever existed but in my imagination. But it does truly exist." And then he took off his own ruby red ring from his finger, and he placed it on Benaiah's finger. The 2 men embraced. He was forgiven. They shared a smile between each other, and King Solomon returned to his throne and placed that ring that said, Gam ze ya'avor, ceci aussi devrait passer, this too shall pass. And he knew that this ring would guide him all of his days, and it would help someone who was feeling melancholy to remember that in time, even when we're at our lowest, we can remember that this too shall pass.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. What a great story. What a great story. So tell me, Selina, how did you first find that story to be meaningful for you?
Oh, well, I'll tell you exactly. So I think in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, I was actually a madricha, a leader on the March of the Living, and which is a trip where you take teenagers and they study all year, but you go with survivors and you go to Poland and you go to the concentration camps and you learn their stories and you're all together. And I was a leader, and we had a weekend near Ontario in Kingston, and we were with the survivors, just the chaperones and the survivors. And at the very end of this weekend gathering, which was incredible, they gave us each a one of those bracelets that you wear that has, and it had "This too shall pass," and it told a very brief version of this, but he was telling us that even this journey will come to an end. And the more I got to know the survivors and the more I heard the stories, and it passed, but I have some incredible friendships from that time, and lots of stories, and even the survivors had a lot of humor, I have to say. So,
Wow.
that story means a lot to me.
I could tell.
Mm,
Yes. Thank you so much. And
pleasure.
friends, we will be continuing this tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 Eastern and again at 8 o'clock. I encourage you to share this with your friends, to let them know that this is happening, and also to visit our YouTube playlist, which will be in the comments there. So if you've missed any of these or you want to hear them over and over again, please come and visit them in the YouTube page, or at least for the next 3 weeks. Come here and hear a fresh story every day. So thank you again, Selina, and good
Pleasure.
night, everyone.
Thank you for inviting.